Well, good day and welcome to another edition of the Granted Show. It's good to have your company today. Thank you for everyone who's joined us live. The program will be recorded for those of you who couldn't make it. It's good to have your company. So, my guest on today's program is somebody that is not a stranger to me, and hopefully not to you, but just in case we will give background. He's written several books, and that's one of the primary reasons why he's on with us today. He has a famous bishop brother. Wonder who we could be talking about. The one and only Roy Francis. Good morning to you, Roy.
Morning, Grantley. It's very nice to be with you. It's been a while, but
Yeah, it's been a while.
lovely to be with you on this medium, I suppose. Yes.
Yeah, it is good to have you, Roy. Thank you so much to agreeing to be on with us today. Roy, I've known you for a number of years, but for those who don't know too much about you, I'm going to sort of ask the kind of questions that they might ask. And let me say this while we're talking about asking questions, please feel free, viewers, to chime in with your questions. I do have a comments area up on my screen here in the studio, and I can see when you post your questions for Roy. And there might be a burning question that you've always wanted to ask Roy, or maybe as we go along in today's interview, you might be prompted to ask him some questions. Is that all right, Roy? Is that okay if we do that?
Right. Absolutely, yes, yes.
Wonderful. So,
I'll predicate things as I go along.
all right. So look, like I said, I've known you for quite some time, Roy, and I think my first question that I need to ask you is about your family. You've got a famous brother, but tell us, about your siblings, your mum and dad, where you were born, where you were brought up.
Thanks very much. I've got a famous family, got a famous father, actually, and mother and grandparents. I'll tell you about them in a second. I personally, particularly, was born in Jamaica, but I came here as a child and lived with my parents who had come here as part of the Windrush generation. My father came in 1953 to Britain, and my mother came in 1953. They are pioneers of the Black Pentecostal church community in England. Church is still going. It's over 75 years old now. And of course, John is the most well-known of the family publicly because of his public profile and the ministry he heads. My father was formerly a member of the Church of God in Christ. And after a few years, he started his own church. The Church of God in Christ is the first Black Caribbean Pentecostal church in Britain.
Oh wow, that's quite deep, Roy. That's quite deep. So, um, I guess you've been asked this question before. I'm going to circle back to that question that I've got in
Mhm.
mind. I'm going to circle back to it because I'm sure you would have been asked this before. Okay, so how many siblings?
There are six of us.
Six.
Yes, six of us, and I'm
Give
the eldest.
You're the eldest.
And
Then
John is the youngest.
is that right?
Yes, John is the baby.
Any sisters?
Yes, Naomi, who comes before John, and she worships with John, and she was part of John's choir, the inspirational choir.
Wow, that's going back a bit. Now, Roy, I know that you've been involved in the gospel music industry for some time and TV as well, right?
Mhm.
So the question that I had in mind that some people may have asked you is, have you ever had any involvement in church ministry like your brother?
Well, I have in an indirect way. I was one of the early gospel artists in this country. In the 60s, I was part of a gospel group called the Soul Seekers, which was the most famous gospel group at that time. In fact, it wasn't really called gospel group, it was a church group. Um, well known within the Black Caribbean Pentecostal church community in England and also abroad. We used to play to audiences, I tell people, 15,000 plus people in Sweden, in Holland, in Germany. and various parts of Europe. That's gospel music in the 60s. People think that everything really kicked off here in the 80s. It really started long before that. So indirectly, I've been involved in the music, in ministry, but in that indirect, in those days when I was 7 years old, there weren't anybody playing the piano or playing any music in church. So my father used to take me to all the churches to play their music for them. So I became well known and had what I call a front seat of the growth and development of the Pentecostal church community in Britain because of that talent and ability that I had.
Yeah, so the thing that yeah, thanks for answering that question. You put a lot of people's mind at ease. So it's been in an indirect way, ministry wise.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, indirect. Well, you've been involved in TV as well, and well known for working with the BBC on on a project that has been talked about for years, and every now and again it still comes up. You know what I'm talking about, but tell our viewers what it is.
If well, if you're talking about, as far as the BBC is concerned, if you're talking about the BBC, you're essentially talking about Songs of Praise,
Songs of Praise.
where, which I was a producer for many years, producing all programs from cathedrals to the gospel music programs that I introduced on Songs of Praise. Been all over the world with them, been all over the country with them. Made programs from, as I say, for cathedral to a little parish church and tucked away a little village in Hampshire or something. I've also made documentary programs to work for ITV in their factual department. The, the company then was Television South. ITV, as you know, is split up into different
Regions. Yeah.
region and companies.
Yes.
So that make up the ITV family. So I worked for one of those. It was called Television South
Yeah.
in those days. And you know, I've done freelance. I've been in television now for over 30 years. So yeah.
Tell us about
It's,
People Get Ready.
well, People Get Ready is interesting because that's the first gospel series, black gospel series that was seen on television. That was in the 1980s. That was on Channel 4. It was
Wow.
huge. It was hugely successful. People talk about it today.
Yes.
If it was around today, it would have been a huge success because there's so much opportunity, more people, there's more understanding and information of gospel music today, more liking of gospel music today than it was there. It was a pioneering program. But what was good about it, it was a mainstream program. It had mainstream budget, mainstream lighting, mainstream production. It was just this absolutely brilliant. And then at that time, the gospel community was at its height. There was superb choirs, superb artists at the highest level. So the program pulled all that together, and I had the opportunity. I started to work at TBS as a researcher and worked my way up to becoming a producer. So I ended up in the latter stages of that series, producing it. And there were a number of spin-offs from that series. We did a big oratorio, what was recorded, called Creation, not the heightened creation, but our creation. And then I was involved in a documentary where we went all over to America and filmed virtually all the major gospel artists and told the story of gospel music. So yeah, I've done a bit, been around a bit, and here
You're
I am
so
now. You
you're
know.
so modest saying I've done a bit. You've worked with some of the biggest names, and I'm sure when you went to America, you would have bumped into people like Andre Crouch and Shirley Caesar and whoever. You know,
Well,
um,
it's interesting. Yeah, you're quite right. I mean, it's interesting. I met all those and others. I brought Shirley Caesar over here for television. I brought Andre Crouch twice to play, to perform on programs. We became a friend. He's one of my favorite, if not my favorite gospel artist because of his sheer songwriting and production and creative ability. He's absolutely magnificent. And I remember him fondly. We'd had some wonderful meals together, some wonderful conversation. And others, Kirk Franklin, said Shirley. See, I can't even remember half the people, but I put it this way:
I shall
I've met most,
remind you, Roy.
I've met most of them. Fred Hammond, of course, Donnie McClurkin.
Yes.
I'm kind of well known for, but you can tell that story.
Yeah. So look, we that story on its own with regards to your television and production, we could talk about all day long, because you've done so much, more than what most people would recognize, I would say. But yeah, one of my first sort of introductions to Roy Francis production is from the level of when you were a gospel concert promoter.
Mm.
Roy, you opened the doors for what we currently have. A lot of people don't know this side of you because many moons has passed, you could say. It was some time ago, but I can fondly remember coming to Christ, 1997, and the concerts were really buzzing at the time. I mean, yeah, there was one or two concerts every year, and it was yourself and
Mm.
people like George Dyer from Gideon Promotions were the leading promoters in the UK
Mm.
at that time. You were hosting people like Fred Hammond, Trinity 57. The list is really, really long, it's a long list. But yeah, one particular event that you did that stays in my mind was at Fairfield Halls. There's two at Fairfields, but one of them in particular was to do with lots of different choirs. You had Kingdom Choir. Do you remember that event?
Carry on, yeah. I
You had
think I
you had
do.
lots
Yeah.
of different choirs, Kingdom Choir. It was all about choirs, right, in the
Yes.
UK.
Yes.
And you could just imagine most choirs are quite big, and
Yes.
so by default, the place was packed. All right. If
Mm-hmm.
you got like, I don't know, 10 big choirs and their family all attend and all of the other families attend, you couldn't get a seat.
Mm.
But yeah, it was like a just huge choir event. Nothing like that has been done since, Roy, which to
Mm-hmm.
your testimony was just a brilliant idea. The other
Thank you.
event at Fairfields was Donnie McClurkin live.
Yeah.
How did that
Okay.
come about, Roy? Because I mean, that's probably one of his biggest selling albums to date. And yeah, it was just a fantastic time of ministry on the actual night. If anyone that is watching, viewing at the moment was there, can testify of this, right? How did that all come about?
Right. Let me go back to the choir first, the choir festival, and then I
Yes.
come to Donnie McClurkin. I had experience of choirs because I managed my brother's choir, the inspirational choir. There were two huge major choirs in England at that time. One was the inspirational choir. It wasn't called inspirational gospel choir, it was called inspirational choir, and the London Community Choir. These were the two choirs that had record deals. I signed the inspirational choir to Sony Music for £750,000 in the 1980s. You,
What?
you work out how much that is
Say
worth
that. Say that again, Roy. You did what?
£750,000 was the contract. Yeah. And it's no, it didn't mean we all got 750,000. That was the value of the contract. No, you work out how much that is worth today. And that was a very famous choir. It was on television, on all the major TV channels, major television programs. The whole country was buzzing with gospel music in the 80s. It was so well known. And I've written in the book about that story. And it's a story worth telling because it's not only a story of spirituality and religiosity. It is that, but it's also a story of social development, political development in this
Yeah.
country. And I've been able to tell that through the choir, both the inspirational and the London Community Choir, led by Basil Mead, a colleague, a friend of mine. We're roughly the same age, come from roughly the same part of the world. We knew each other when we were young, and I'm amazed that he's still going. He's just meaning that he's still got the choir and he's still touring. I got a call from him some time ago, and I said, Basil, where are you? He said, I'm in Russia. I said, Basil, at this age and this time in your life, I said, listen, man, I take a plane ride to somewhere else. It takes me now a week to recover. How do you do it? Anyway, it's just a remarkable person. Now, let me come to Donnie McClurkin. 1999, the BBC and myself came to an end, partly because
Yeah.
rationalization and all kinds of things. The BBC was changing, and in those days, you know, well, they made the decision on who to retain
Yeah.
and who not to. Even though I had won a number of international awards, however, so I didn't know what to do, where to. I thought, well, I'm not going to go applying for jobs for the BBC because I know the BBC work. When they want you, they find you because they found me to work for Songs of Praise when I was in an apartment in New York. Now, this sounds all fancy. In an apartment, and the phone rang, and someone, this is the BBC. I said, how does the BBC know I'm here? And to this day, I don't know how they tracked me down. And they said, when you come back to London, Roy, I'd like you, there's a new editor, Songs of Praise. I'd like to come and have lunch and we'll have a discussion.
Yeah.
And I got the job. I had to apply for it and go through the process. So it wasn't nepotism.
Yeah.
But the point is, so when everything came to an end, I said, I'm not going to go through that process. So keep applying. What I'll do, I'll just decide. And I sort of thought and waiting. My wife and family were in Jamaica on holiday. And for some reason, I decided I want to go in with them. I think it's because I was in limbo as to what my next move. And then it was like a revelation, start your own business. And it was so funny. I couldn't wait for my wife to come back to tell her, I'm going to start my own business. This is the next move. Anyway, cut a long story short, started my own business, set it all up. Then I got a call from America. Roy, this is so-and-so here. We're thinking, do you know Donnie McClurkin? I said, I don't know him, but I've heard of him. Anyway, we're thinking of doing a recording in London, looking for somebody who can facilitate all that. Would you be interested? I said, of course I will. So send me the details. And send me the details. It so happened that my sister and John knew Donnie McClurkin very well. He used to make clandestine visits to John's church and got very friendly with my sister and her family. Now, this was a time before nobody knew Donnie McClurkin. He was not known. He was a session singer, interestingly enough, for Andre Crouch and others. So when this whole thing was put together and the manager came and I saw him, I said, I know you. He said, I thought your name was familiar. He was the manager, still is, I think, of, what's his name? Jesus, you're the center of my, come on, God. Jesus, you're the center of my heart. What's that? Richard Smallwood.
Richard Smallwood's
He
Visions.
He was the manager of Richard Smallwood. And he said,
Okay.
I've now become manager of Donnie McClurkin. I know you, we can do this together. Cut a long story short, we decided, the whole thing was put together, and we recorded Donnie McClurkin's Live in London album. The video that came out of it and the visual recording that came out of it, I did that, set that up, everything, and did the video. It became a massive hit in America. It made Donnie McClurkin. That album, Live in London, is totally responsible for where Donnie McClurkin is today. And it's because this is the genius of the album.
Yeah.
He used to visit John Church and he heard all these old Caribbean choruses.
Yes.
And he decided to put them on the album.
Yep.
And he called this Caribbean Medley.
Yeah.
That made the album distinctive from all the other American songs that's on there. It's a fantastic singer. Yeah, I didn't personally think much of the recording. As recorded live, it's kind of poor. If you listen to it.
Oh, how can you say such a thing, Mike? Pablo Knight was on the boards that night.
No, the musicians were good. I'm saying the recording of it. It was recorded live, and they didn't. Gartney, you know what type of person I am.
Yes.
They didn't pay enough attention to the production of it. So if you listen carefully, you hear some glitches on the recording. But nevertheless, because the songs were great, the atmosphere was great, and that Caribbean medley, it made such an impression. So in America, everybody remembers that, and the song "We Will Fall Down" and "Great Is Thy Faithfulness."
Yeah.
Yeah, it comes back to the point. Songs are everything, and it's interesting. I say that the gospel artists. I don't know if it sinks in enough time. Actually, songs are everything. You can make one song, produce one song, write one song. Well, oh happy day. The Edwin Hawkins family lives off that
Yeah.
one song
The one
to
song.
this day.
Look
It
how long
makes
ago that was recorded and penned.
1963. It makes millions for
Yeah.
that family every year. One song, and I can go through a number of artists where they've got one song and it's so anyway, that became the seminal moment. Grantley, people used to come from America and go up to Fairfield Halls just to see the building. They
Yeah.
used to, they
Where the
used to write,
recording took place.
they used to phone me and tell me
That's
that's how
amazing.
big it is. That's how big that became.
Yeah.
I could go
And
on, but
and you
this
and you
is
know
enough.
what I
This is
mean?
enough.
That album alone should be celebrated a lot more. And in America, they do things like that where they have the anniversary
Yeah.
of this album or whatever. But the medley was just out of this world, and I don't know whose idea it was to let John Francis's little daughter at the time sing the last note. Do you remember?
That was yes, of course. That was
Going to
Donnie.
see
That
my
was
Jesus someday. Iconic.
that was Donnie McClurkin's idea.
Yeah.
He got very friendly with John's family, and of course, Juanita then was a little baby, and
She was a
he's
little
very,
baby girl. She's a big woman now.
she's a big woman now, but she was a little baby then, little
Yeah.
baby girl then, and he's very friendly with her, very friendly with the family. So it was his idea, like it was his idea to have Jamoka Fashola introduce
That's
the
right.
evening. Yes, that
And she
was
did a
those are,
wonderful job.
oh, she's
She could have been your
wonderful.
sister. You both got the same patter.
I know very well. In fact, I auditioned her a number of times. She will always credit me and I'm grateful for that, for her success in the needed, because I gave her a first opportunity.
Yeah, that certainly did help. I mean, the introduction to the album, she's on the recording, come on, put your hands
Yeah.
together. Da, 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 da. Yeah, well done. I mean, that was just an iconic moment, and for me being in the audience as a fledgling Christian radio presenter, because I've been presenting on radio
Yeah.
even before I was a Christian. But for me, I mean, when he did "We Fall Down," and they did a revamp after. I mean, people just could not. The Spirit of God was just heavy in the place.
Yeah, it was a
Heavy.
wonderful evening. It really,
Great
really
evening. Great evening.
Yeah, but I also take, I take a technical view of things as well, because that's how I am, and I'm not that person. You did mention something that not many people know me and know what I do. That's partly deliberate on my part. I'm a person who likes to be behind things, like to take a back seat to things. I'm not a front person. If I hadn't written a book, I wouldn't be here doing this. I don't do this. Yeah. But
I'm
because I've
so
written a
glad
book,
that you stepped out of the shadows, Roy, because you've done so
well,
much more than time would allow us. I remember there was another concert that you did, Roy, that I have to talk about. Have to. Alvin Slaughter.
oh,
You did Alvin Slaughter, but not only did you did Alvin Slaughter, you made it a little bit different, because you had Alvin, which was kind of like more traditional grown-up worship. But on the same bill, you had Winans Phase 2, which are the sons of the
yes,
Winans, right?
yes.
On the same bill, Sons of the Winans. I was totally amazed. And on that same bill, if I remember rightly, you had the Jordan family.
Yes. God, you've got a good memory.
Yeah, God is good, man.
You've
What
got
can
a
I
good
say?
memory.
What can I say? You forgot all that, right?
I've
The
forgotten
Jordan family.
that. Yes,
Selena,
you're
who's
quite
on.
right. Yes.
Selena, that now presents on Premiere, was
Yes.
part of the Jordan family. Her dad, mother,
Yeah.
and the brothers,
Yeah. And Clinton.
Carlton,
Yeah.
Clinton, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely wonderful. And I interviewed Alvin at the event in a nice little cozy room, and I had my audience in the room asking questions with me. Fantastic. Alvin Slaughter must tip his hat to you. That was a fantastic concert.
Well, thanks for that. I have a lot of time for Alvin Slaughter. Um, I think it's the only gospel artist I have promoted and used my money to bring here,
Yeah.
who, in gratitude, said thank you, or wrote to me and appreciated what I'd done and sent me a book, which I still got today.
Oh wow.
Not every gospel artist sees things that way, operates in that light.
Yeah.
And I appreciate it for that. And he's just a wonderful, humble, lovely man,
Yeah.
very easygoing. He was
Yeah.
more happy to come and perform here than the money I was paying him. In fact,
Yeah.
that didn't mean
It
anything
didn't
to him.
mean anything really.
No, he just
He's that
wanted to
kind of
come.
guy, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly. He just wanted to come and perform. And I
Yeah.
saw, of course, I met him in America. I had him on one of the programs I did in America. And, he's one of, I'm going to say something slightly controversial here, but let me try and be as diplomatic as I can. He's one of the few artists where there's not a disconnect between his life off stage and on stage. I say no more than that.
Yeah, I understand. I understand. I understand. All right, so the reason why we're here today, the primary reason is this. You've written several books, Roy. You've written. This isn't your first rodeo.
No.
All right, but this book here has caught my attention. You did write a book about Windrush before this book, but this one caught my attention. Windrush: The 7 Events That Changed Britain. It's been out for a little while now. You can see the information on screen. That's how you get hold of Roy in terms of buying the book. And we will actually be giving away a copy of that book today, won't we, Roy?
Yes, yes. My
Right.
delight to do.
So we've talked a lot. All
Yeah.
right, and we've still got a little way to go, and we'll set a question at the end of the interview, and I'll throw up the website information again. That's how you're going to get in contact with Roy and answer the question to win your copy of the book. Now, Windrush, very important to anybody coming out of Caribbean heritage, people that came from the Caribbean. Very, very important. We're on the more or less the eve of Windrush Day as we speak right now. Roy, I would imagine that you've done a huge amount of research in your lead up to writing these books, okay, with regards to the topic of Windrush. Tell us about, the kind of things that you had to get into before you started putting pen to paper, as it were.
I think it's important to give a little
Yes,
background
give a
how
synopsis.
how this all came about. I come from an academic background. I went to university in 1970s when there was one or two, three black people in the whole university sector.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry, in my university. There were only four of us.
What university did you attend?
Mine was a university. I went to two universities, University of Leicester and University of London.
Okay.
So I come from that academic. So a lot of people know I'm doing gospel, I'm intelligent. They didn't know I have that background. I also went out, I was also a teacher. And I went and spent 4 years teaching in Zambia. Yeah.
You still teach, Roy?
Well, in an indirect,
You give classes.
No, I also do things indirectly, as you know. Right. How I came to write
Yeah.
is that a publisher friend of mine who ran a production company like myself, we used to give each other work, an English gentleman, lovely man. And he changed his company and became a publisher. And he always used to say to me, Roy, with your knowledge and background, you need to write. And I used to say to him, well, I'm not a writer. So I don't know why I think I need to write. Anyway, like everything with me, one day I sat down. It was always buzzing in my ear, this idea of writing. One day I said, hang on a minute. This whole Windrush thing, I know that story. I was part of that story.
Yeah.
I had a front seat to that story. Unlike most people, my father was one of the first Pentecostal preachers in this country. He predates the New Testament. He predates prophecy.
Yeah.
The person he's not predated is Mother McClurkin, who started the Church of God in Christ in 1953. So therefore, I know this story. So I began to write. You know, as one does. I began sat down one day and I just continue writing. And the result is, I thought, well, all right, let me do a book. And I went to my friend and said, look, yeah, I'm ready now to write a book. He said, what are you going to write? I said, well, I know a bit about gospel music. He said, well, we'll write about that. So my first book is How to Make Gospel Music Work for You. It's on the website. If you look at my website. The idea behind that, because I've worked with gospel artists all my life, I thought, and not only that, but because the music business was changing rapidly, the internet, social media, record companies had changed their business model. I said, I need to equip gospel artists how to operate in this new world. So I wrote How to Make Gospel Music Work for You in this new internet social media age, although it doesn't say that on the cover, but that's the genesis, that's the raison d'etre behind the book. Now, in order to create a roadmap for gospel artists in this new world they are inhabiting, I said to myself, to give them the background of gospel music, both here and in America. So the first part of that book is the history of gospel music in this country. I haven't got time to go into that, but you can read it in the book. After that, that did quite well, but none of people said to me, look, I like all that Windrush stuff. Why don't you write more about it? So I thought, once you catch a bug, you know, it's like a dog with a bone. I'm researching 2 books as we speak here now.
Yeah.
From a person who didn't want to start this thing, I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, I'm one of Amazon's best friend, I can tell you. I was looking up the other day how much I spend on. I've always had a library, from about the age of 15, 14, 15 at the library. So now the greatest thing to me really is Amazon, because I go online and the book arrives next day. But leave that to one moment. So I decided to write the Windrush and the Black Pentecostal Church in Britain, because I thought, let me tell the story of the Black Pentecostal Church in Britain as how I know it. So the title of the book is A Personal Story. I thought, hey, let me do it that way before I get all these academics who've done all these profound research. Oh, it wasn't quite like that. Blah, blah, this is you're going interpreting it this way and that way. You know, all the doctrines, you got it all wrong. So I thought, let me not get into that. Let me just write a personal story of the history of the Black Pentecostal Church in Britain. So that's what the second book is about. Now, the third book is what brings us here, is I kept thinking, and I thought to myself, what specifically are the things the Windrush generation brought to Britain that has changed Britain? Because
Yes.
it obviously has changed Britain. You can look at Britain and what it was like in 1948, 50, 1950s to what it is today. Now, every society is dynamic, meaning every society goes through changes. But the change, interestingly, on that historical timeline, once Caribbean people came, it set up a whole range of changes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So to myself, well, let me see if I can identify a few of these. And that's what the book is about. 7 events. I've chosen 7. People can think of many more, I suppose. But I thought, and they're not, some people say, well, not brilliant changes. I talk about Carnival, for example, which is a huge change. It's not something, it's all jump up stuff. No. That means they don't understand the history of how Carnival came into being. It has a profound and a truly transformative and significant reason why Carnival started and what it meant and what it did in terms of black people of Caribbean, not only Caribbean, but black people in this country, and
Yeah.
how it impacted on the country and the society as a whole. So I identified 7 events, and the book is about those 7 events.
Carnival's one of them, Roy. Is that right?
Yes, Carnival is one of
Okay.
them.
So look, and very important, because I mean, I think it's deemed as being one of the biggest carnivals in Europe. The Notting Hill
It's the
Carnival,
second. It's the second biggest
second
carnival in the
biggest
world.
in the
In the
world.
world,
Yeah.
the biggest is the Rio de Janeiro carnival.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I just
but
imagine, right? Just imagine so many people travel from all over the world they'll be embarking on this country at the end of August for Notting Hill Carnival. All of the major broadcast companies will be in attendance. BBC One Extra will have their own stage. You've got people flying in from all over the world in terms of artists gracing stages and that. It's great that you took the time out to give the history on that in your book, Roy.
Well, let me say two things about that. You can read
Yeah.
your listeners can read and viewers can read the story. It started after a murder.
The carnival started after a
After
murder.
a murder in 1953 in London,
In
London,
1953, did you say?
Yes, in London, Notting Hill Gate. It started
Wow.
after a murder of Kelso Cochrane. This was a young Antiguan young lad who had injured himself. He went to hospital to get himself sorted out, I think a finger or something.
Yeah.
And it was set upon by a group of white teddy boys who murdered him. A lady who was here called Claudia Jones from Trinidad decided that she's going to start a carnival. The idea of starting the carnival, if you know the history of carnival in the Caribbean, it was not just a jump up, it was the idea of define the slaves, define their condition and their slave masters. The slave masters
Yes.
to keep their masquerade balls. The slave was excluded from it. So the slave decided to keep their own masquerade balls. But the difference was that the slaves' masquerade balls were a parody of what was taking place. They were mocking their slave masters. So when 58, this murder took place and Claudia Jones decided to start a carnival. The first carnival was held at in New Cross, in St Pancras Town Hall, rather.
Oh, wow.
It was a form of defiance. She was saying, all right, white people, because racism was rampant and bad and horrible, and
Yeah.
black people suffered really badly. You know, there's no law against racial discrimination, so people could just be racist and act out racist intent at will, at nauseum. So her idea started with Carnival was to say, this is who we are, this is how we operate, take it and leave it, doesn't matter, this is us. And that was the genesis of Carnival. It's an act of defiance. It's an act of defiance. It is mushroom and morphified is what the word is. Yeah.
Metamorphosed into something which
Into
is what
something.
it is now. Yeah.
It's now worth £50 million
Oh, yeah.
to the London economy. It over the 2 days, yep. It's just under 2 million people visit the Notting Hill Gate area, that small place.
Yeah.
The government tried to get rid of it at one stage, but the black community and its supporters held out.
Absolutely.
That's just one of the stories that I unpick in the book to show the 7 events that changed Britain. I just mentioned 2. I won't go into it. 2 others. 439 New Cross Road was the fire. The New Cross
The
fire.
New Cross fire.
It's a seminal moment. Football, I call the game made beautiful, is another seminal moment. 40% of all players in the English league now are black.
Yes. Amazing.
There was a time that never happened. They couldn't get a black player couldn't. The 3 black players who triggered the whole thing publicly was Laurie Cunningham, Batson, and what's his name from West Bromwich? Cyril Regis.
Yeah.
Cyril Regis.
And then later on, there were people like John Barnes, etc. They kind of opened the door, didn't they?
The foundation was opened by these guys,
Yeah.
and Clyde Best and others before, and even before that,
Yeah.
in the 1930s and 40s, there were black players. But go into the book, you'll find that.
Yeah.
And the last one is that the 3 black MPs who got elected in 1870 to Parliament, I tell their story, how that happened. Don't forget, up to 1970, there was not one black person.
Not one.
Not one.
You'll be lucky if you could get through the back door.
You'd be lucky if you could get anywhere near the place. Yeah. But now, look at it. God is great.
Oh, yeah.
Kemi Badden, don't like her politics, but for her to be leader of the Conservative Party is nothing short of a miracle. This is the party of the Whigs. This
Yeah,
is British establishment. This
yeah.
is Britain's core of what it is to be British. It's a black woman who now heads that party.
Many people will be searching their memories, and for me, it was like Bernie Grant, Diane Abbott. They're the
Right.
ones that, yeah,
Well, the three was Bernie Grant, Diane Abbott, and Paul Burton.
that's
Yeah.
right.
Now it's interesting that George Lamming, is that his name? Yeah. Who is the foreign secretary? He comes out of Bernie. He holds Bernie Grant old seat in Tottenham.
That's right.
Now, for a black person, minister, to be foreign secretary again is huge. He's the third most important person in the government. It's the prime minister, the chancellor of the exchequer, and the foreign secretary.
So there's a chance that a little bit down the line, he could go on to be prime minister, the first
Well,
black prime minister.
look at it. Britain's had an Asian prime minister.
Yeah,
The next one would be the next one could very well, and the next one from a non-English community could very well be a Caribbean or an African.
love the way you phrased that, Roy. Love the way you phrased that. So yeah, it's a great book. I would definitely, I started reading. I got halfway through and then got called off to do something else. Great book. What I've read so far, Roy, definite eye opener. Can tell that you did a lot of research to get the book completed. Um, any sort of like, what's next for Roy Francis and not just writing books, but in general, because I know that you've been bitten by several bugs, writing being one of them. What are you getting excited about at the moment, Roy?
Research, which I've gone back. All I've done, Grant, is go back to where I came from. I started as a 14-year-old, very interested in all things academic and intellectual.
Yes.
Yeah, and then that led me into other related areas because everything I've done is actually related. I've now come back to where I started. So the next thing, I can't see anything out now outside of what I'm doing. I've got 2 books on the go. I'm researching 2 books. I'm looking at 5 remarkable Windrush pioneers, which I want to write about. I won't
Oh,
mention them.
wonderful. That's great.
Yeah,
That's great.
and I've got a big book that I'm reaching. That may take a couple of years, God willing, to come to light, and that is Christianity and slavery, or slavery and Christianity. I
Yeah.
want to explore that actually, because
Okay.
that's an interesting story. It's interesting phenomenon there. How Christianity impacted on slavery
Yeah.
and how slavery impacted on Christianity,
Christianity.
because we are all recipient of that
Yeah.
process.
I am.
So
You
I'm
you
into
bring
lots
you
of
bring a smile to my face, Roy, because of all of the things that I've known you for, I can now add the title of author to the
yes,
list.
yes, and I think
Who knew?
even I now could basket that because I don't normally take titles, but I'm willing to take that one.
Yeah,
Isn't it?
you're an
So,
author, Roy, in every sense of the word, and I'm so
thank you,
pleased.
thank
I
you.
am I'm hugely impressed and grateful that you've embarked upon this avenue. You have brought so much information to us, not just us here in the UK, but obviously as an author that your books are traveling circling the globe, as it were. You are informing us of some great events that's happened over the years and in recent times as well. Continue to do so, Roy.
Grantley, we need to know our history. We need to cherish our memories. Knowing our history gives us confidence.
Yeah,
Yeah, gives us confidence. Knowing where we come from, who we are, what we are. I talk about how the church, the Pentecostal church community in my book, has changed British religious landscape. It's had a profound effect on religion in this country, but we don't know because maybe we're part of that influence, so we don't think it's not all that. But believe me, it is profound because we can look at what the religious community was like before Caribbean Pentecostals started worshiping here and offering a type of Christianity to what it is afterwards. So that's very interesting. But also, Grant, let me commend you for staying the course. I remember the early days, you were always plugging away at it, always part of it. You've always been interested in the media and radio. You've kept going, and I commend you for that.
Thank
And
you, Roy.
I tell people part of the trick of life is to keep going.
Keep
In
going.
spite of just keep going. Because it's not just about today. It's not about you. It's the legacy we leave. You know,
Absolutely.
people say to me, "Oh,
Absolutely.
why have you written a book?" I said, "I've written a book for my children.
Yeah.
It's their story. It's their legacy." Do you understand? So when I'm all gone and their grandparents, they say, this is what it used to be like in the 80s, the
Yeah.
90s, 20s, the
Yeah.
21. So that I hear people saying things now and carrying on as if nothing happened in the church community. I said, because they don't know. Very few things now are new.
Yeah. Absolutely. Roy, I do commend you. Thank you so
Thank
much
you very
for
much.
being
Yeah,
my guest on the program today.
thank you.
Continue to write books, continue to
Thank
do
you.
workshops where you get into the classroom and people
Yes.
come out to, draw from your knowledge. I know you
Thank
do a
you.
lot of workshops.
Yeah.
You've got something coming up, or has it been cancelled, or have you got any
No,
workshops that
no,
you're...
no. I'm doing a Keep the Faith
Okay.
online talk on Monday evening.
Tell us
Yeah.
about that. Tell us about that quickly.
Well, it's Marcia Dixon does these series of talks.
Good
She
old
tells me
Marcia.
she's got
Thank you,
quite and
Marcia.
yeah,
Thank
yeah, she's
you.
not yeah. She said she's had a good turn up for this, so I'm
Okay.
looking forward to that.
All
And it's
right.
all
And
part. I'm talking about how the Windrush generation influenced politics, religion, and culture in this country. That's what that talk
And
is
how
on.
can people be a part of that? Is there a link?
Yes, there is. There's a link on my. I haven't got it on my website, but I can put it on my website. But if you're going to Keep the Faith, you go to the link on Keep the Faith. There's a link on Keep the Faith
There is a
website.
link. There is a
Yeah,
link.
on Marcia
Excellent.
Dixon. Yeah, and it's all over social media because I'm not one who's always on social media, but I've seen it. So
Yeah, I've
it's
seen it. It's there. It's
yeah,
there. So that's this
look
coming
on it.
Monday, right?
Yeah, this coming Monday
All right.
evening.
So do that. Get on to Keep the Faith and make sure you join Marcia Dixon and Roy for that talk. We're giving away a copy of this book today. It's called Windrush: The 7 Events That Changed Britain. It's by Roy Francis, my guest on the program today. And it's a very simple question. So we said that the carnival is one of the bigger carnivals in the world. Did we say that it was the biggest carnival, or is there one that's bigger than the Notting Hill Carnival? So very, very simple answer. It can be the biggest or it can be the second biggest. And how you get your question to get this book is by going to the website that you can see on screen, www.royfrancis.co.uk, and you can reach out to Roy to give your answer right there. For now, Roy, thank you so much for being my guest on the program.
Thank you.
I really do appreciate the efforts that you put in to educate us.
Thank you.
And I look forward to speaking to you when you put the next book out, okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
Any
Thank you very
hellos,
much.
goodbyes to anybody that may be watching?
Well, I'd like
Any?
to send greetings to everybody. I mean, so many people is part of my journey and been so responsible for what a little success or whatever influence or whatever I've had. And I thank them entirely and dearly. And I obviously thank my late parents, Bishop T.T. Francis, and my mother, Mother E. Francis.
Roy, thank you so much for being my guest on the program today. I really do appreciate you. Have a wonderful day.
You do the same as well.
And we'll catch up real soon. Thank you for my guest on the program today, Roy Francis. I call him Sir Roy because I think it's about time that he was knighted. And we can catch up again real soon. Thank you for joining us on the program. God bless you, and I shall see you on the next one.